So I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about building your audience using social media, which I loved the tie-in and was writing notes. If anybody saw me, I write in green pen. I have a presentation, and then I have green pen by the time I actually present all over it. I don't use red. I don't know. Okay, so they're handing out some tip sheets. I like to do everything in tips, kind of make it bite-sized. I also, if you're looking at them, you're thinking, these make no sense, or else you're thinking, thank you, Captain Obvious. So I just like to make you need me. I like to be needed. We're going to talk about building your audience, building true fans through engagement and becoming relatable and relevant to that audience. Everybody familiar, and I know I get nervous when I'm in a younger crowd because I think most of you will know this clip. Everybody familiar with the clip from the I Love Lucy show? It's Lucy and Ethel in the chocolate factory. Yeah. Okay, if you're not familiar with it, YouTube it. You've got to see it. So basically, social media is a lot like this clip, and let me explain it. So, social media, it's always happening, right? Everybody's got Pinterest accounts and Twitter and Facebook, and you guys have more things than I have because you're younger, most of you. It's always happening. It's always coming like those chocolates. And we can get to a point where we can feel that frenzy of we've got to be there all the time to be part of whatever conversation is happening now. Now, if you watch this clip again on YouTube, I want you to take a moment and think about it from a little bit of a different perspective. Now, it would remove the comedy and the whole point of that particular clip for their purpose. But what if Lucy and Ethel would have stepped back, taken a breath, and then dove back in? Sure, the chocolates, some of them would have continued to go on, but the point is there were always more chocolates coming, right? That's the point with social media. So I really like to focus on the stress-free aspect of social media. And so that's what we're going to talk about. A lot of times when I start this, and I think I'm going to change this a little bit and describe it, when I do this workshop, describe this more than act it out. I was thinking about Toy Story, and I was thinking about, is it Big Al? My kids are old, so I haven't seen Toy Story in a few years. In fact, I was who Toy Story 3 was made towards because my kids were going off to college. But the point is it Big Al? Is that Big Al? Oh gosh, I'm so pleased with my memory. You know, it's that the commercial comes on, it's loud, it's kind of in your face. We all, when we're watching TV, we know those commercials that get loud, they're in your face, they're kind of obnoxious. Well, a lot of times, because I sell services, I'm an author promoter, when I'm starting this particular workshop, I will come out into the crowd, and I'm afraid to get too close because of the ring, but I'll say, hi, I'm Susie Q, and you need to hear about my social media. And then I'll go over to somebody else and I'll say, have you met me? Because I'm going to change your world when it comes to reaching your audience through social media. And depending on the crowd, I might do that multiple times. Now, what am I doing? I'm doing a hard sell. Is there anything about the way I approach my interaction with you that would actually make you want to hear what I have to say? In fact, when I get in people's faces, which you're probably glad I didn't, they step back. It's awkward. It's uncomfortable. Well, the same thing goes with our social media. We need to be approaching it in a way that is not self-promoting, not pushing an agenda, and not a vocal warm-up. Me, 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 me. That's what we want to avoid. We want to have a dialogue versus a monologue. That's how we engage with our audience, when we are interacting versus when we're standing on our soapbox and just speaking. Now, I love that the questions were asked in the beginning. Who's published? That was really important to me. I was going to actually ask that question. I teach this workshop to writers in all stages, because if you aspire to write, you need an audience. And you need to begin engaging with them now, at whatever stage it is. And I was also in the elevator with the author who has 15 books published, and she needs to also be engaging with her readers as well. Whether you already have them or whether you are just beginning to dream about having that audience, now is the time to engage. And we want to do that through having a dialogue versus a monologue. Okay, give me an R. Actually, I want 3 R's. Relational. Arg. Relational, relevant, and relatable. When we're engaging through our social media, if we keep in mind those 3 R's, we are going to have more effective engagement. We need to be relational. We don't need to say what we're going to, the store down the hill to go purchase for our dorm room, or, what we ate for dinner. Although if you're writing about food, or you're a foodie, or you're a food blogger, that would probably be a good thing to write about. Again, being aware of your audience. But we need to be relational. Relevant. What's going on now? What's important now? I have one of my children, I've got all adult children. One of my children works for Liberty, and she came home from work last evening and told a story. Did anybody do any online tests last night? I was thinking about changing my name to Wendy. That's relevant, right? It's also relatable. Did that frustrate anybody? Oh my goodness, I would have been so frustrated. But what fun, what fun. If you're on social media, you could have put #LU, #Wendy, and just played with that. How many did that affect? I was praying for all of you guys that it was affecting, because it had to be frustrating. Anyway, it's relevant, it's relational, it's relatable. I'm going to talk a lot about Facebook and Twitter, just to kind of keep it simple. We can't talk about everything. But if you take the things that I'm sharing today and apply them to your other platforms, your other social media platforms, it works, okay? So you just have to translate it as we go. Recently, or actually in 2 weeks, my husband and I celebrate 25 years of marriage. Yep. He wouldn't want to subject anybody else to me, so he stuck with me. And so back in May, my son was getting ready to be deployed. He's in the military. Back in May, we actually had our anniversary party to celebrate it. And one of the things that I did was I put pictures from our party on Facebook. And I tweeted about our party. We found out about my son's deployment and had to plan it very quickly. So we actually called it an anniversary elopement, because we planned the party in 2 weeks. And I shared all these photos and the experience along the way of what it's like to put together a big event like that in 2 weeks, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I have gotten comments since May, guys, since May, about people who have enjoyed the pictures, who felt like they were there. Why? Because it's relational. It's allowing them to see an important milestone in my life, in my family's life. They got to see pictures of my kids. And my son, I was very proud. He was in his uniform. Kind of made me a proud mom. But the point is, it was relatable. It was relational. It was relevant to me, not necessarily to everybody else, but people enjoyed it. I was at an event with an author in Baltimore this, I'm holding this up like I'm speaking into it. Beam me up, Scotty. Okay, so I was at an event. I'm actually going to hook this so I don't keep doing that. I was at an event on Saturday, and I had an author come up to me, and she said, now this was May. May, guys, how many months ago was that? A lot, right? She came up to me, and the first thing she said was, thank you for sharing your pictures from your anniversary party. I felt like I was there. How many months later? It made an impact. It's because I was reaching my audience. Buzzwords for my brand, for my business, engage and relate. What was I doing? I was engaging. I was being relatable. I was reaching my audience. Okay, let's talk about balancing act. 80-20 is what you need to remember. When you're doing your social media, I really like to adhere to an 80-20 balance. 80% is going to be those R's. Relational, relevant, relatable. The other 20% can be self-promoting. So if you have a book, if you have a blog, which I actually agree with the blog stance that was made earlier. If you have a blog, if you're writing articles that are being put out and printed or put out digitally, promote those, absolutely, because that all speaks to building your brand and establishing your audience and helping your audience find you. But keep that within a 20% range. Otherwise, it begins to start to feel like that hard sell. I find that if I all of a sudden notice that my social media is beginning to feel more like a monologue, then I need to go back and look at what I'm doing. And usually the culprit is I'm doing too much of a hard sell or a push. Now, fortunately for me, I'm able to talk a lot about what authors are doing. So I don't really necessarily talk about myself a whole lot, and I do promote myself that way. But 80-20, does that make sense? Think about it. When you talk to somebody in real life, if all they ever do is talk about themselves, do you really want to talk to them a whole lot more? No, we don't. Okay. How many here are on Twitter? Hold those hands up high. Come on. I've got old eyes. All right, thank you. All right, how about Facebook? Okay, big difference. Big difference. How many here prefer Twitter? Okay, who here prefers Facebook? All right, this is my point. Nearly everybody had an opinion, one or the other. So if you are an author, if you are a writer trying to reach your audience, if you are only on one or the other, guess what you're doing? You're missing an audience. You're missing part of your audience. So it really behooves you to go outside of what your preference is to be engaging with a fuller audience, a larger audience, by being in both places. All right, keep your voice. This probably does not apply to the majority in the room, but I am going to say it because it's something that you're going to want to keep in mind, and it does apply to some. Be careful what you hire out. As you write, you're going to find that your time there's going to be demand on it, and it's hard to accomplish everything that you need to accomplish. The problem is when you hire things out and I've seen a lot of shift in the industry where authors are hiring people to help them with their social media. The problem with that, anybody heard how important it is as a writer to establish your voice? Right? Very important to establish your voice. Well, what happens if you hire somebody else to do your social media? They're not going to match your voice. And so your fans or your potential audience are going to notice the disconnect. There is a very well-known author, and she actually has a lot of fans, like most authors would kill to have a fraction of her fans on Facebook. She had a manager who was actually doing her social media for her and doing a decent job. They parted ways. She took over her social media. Now, I'm not a numbers person, so I always ask my husband, who's so sweet in the back, to make sure I get the numbers correct. So when they parted, she was at 50,000 followers on her 30,000 followers on her fan page, and within 3 months, she went to 100,000. What was the difference? It was her voice. She was the one connecting. So be careful. We all need help with time management. In fact, I switched phones with my husband, and he's been tweeting for me in the back, so I could actually be engaged and take notes and make all these green notations on this. But the point is, keep your voice. Whatever you do, at whatever point you are, no matter how busy you get, make sure you maintain your voice. All right, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Many of you are probably going to want to be Christian authors that bring your Christianity and your Christian worldview into what you write. Makes sense. We are at liberty after all. However, one of the things that I work a lot with Christian authors, one of the things that I see that is such a concern for me is some of these authors, they have ministered at the deepest level. They have poured blood, sweat, and tears into these works that they are presenting in bookstores and through ebooks and through self-publishing and all these other avenues. And then all of a sudden, they lose their minds and they undo that message of love and hope with a Facebook post. I'm not kidding. I have an example. I always give good examples, and I use people's names and give them shout outs. I will never give a name for a bad example. There's an author, she writes for the CBA market, which is the Christian Bookseller Association market, and she writes lovely books about love and hope and all things good and all things that would point us to Christ and the redemption of Christ. And yet, she put a Facebook post up not too long ago that said something to the effect of, "I cannot believe my husband. My son asked him a question, and he knew he better not ask me because I would have been the adult and said no." Now, I fictionalize it a little bit because I would never want this author to be embarrassed. Fortunately, she took the post down. It was only up about 15 minutes. But it did not communicate her entire brand, which is the love of Christ. Now, I can tell you, I've had moments like that I have felt that way. That's the time when you pick up the phone, you call your bestie. Are you even called besties anymore? I'm aging myself, right? That's when you call your best friend, or you call your mom, or you go take the dog out for a walk, or you go for a run and you tell it to Jesus, but you don't dump it on your social media. And I know that especially in this audience, you guys are aware that potential employers will look at your social media and things like that. But also for a career as a writer, your audience is going to do the same thing. They're going to look at what you're saying. At the point, I just actually wrote a blog about this. I guest blog. At the point you accept the call to be a writer, you accept the mantle to become a public figure, regardless of how popular and how many millions you do or do not sell, you have stepped into a role. And especially as Christians, we have stepped into a role of ambassadors of Christ publicly. And we need to be careful and guarded as to what we do with our social media. Okay, it's all about me. Okay, so I just said no hard sell, and now I'm saying it's all about me. Have I become Jekyll and Hyde? No. Okay, let's talk about bios. Social media bios are not your credentials. They are not your resumes. What they are is more of a memoir. They should make people smile. They should make people want to know more. They should not make people go, oh, well, they're quite accomplished, and move on. So I'm going to use my bio, which I actually have been wanting to update it, but I keep teaching this workshop, so I finally did it today. So you guys are getting it brand new, hot off the presses. My Twitter bio is reluctant writer, ready speaker. Loves Jesus, Mr. Susie Q. That's my Mr. Susie Q back there. And my kids, author promoter, Disney freak, coffee snob, Sharpie queen. Very sweet, but not the snack cake. Then when it talks about location, I travel all the time, all the time. So I put my location is wherever I go, there I am. I'm quirky. I'm just kind of that way. People need to know when they interact with me, they're going to get that from me. So I try to make it part of it. Anybody else miss this Hostess cakes when they were gone? I totally missed them. And there's one snack cake that still hasn't made it back to the shelves. It's the Susie Q's. Very sad. It's a play on that. I get more people that comment on my Twitter bio about the snack cakes than anything else. I will also tell you that my bio has caused me to get my highest paying job to date on Twitter. So, but it's to engage, it's to let people know a little bit about me. Sean's Mr. Susie Q, that's actually his Twitter handle, and no, I did not name him that. Says, trophy husband, the man behind the woman. Now, it's obviously a play on Wizard of Oz, right? But it's also a play on, he's got a picture with his arms crossed like this, and he's back to back with Donald Duck. So it's kind of a play on the whole Disney fun, too. Have fun with it. I could have a lot of other things as far as credentials and resume that I could put in there, but that's not the place for it. Think about what makes you uniquely you and what will connect you in a unique way with your audience. Okay, share and share alike. Share, and this is especially if you're in the beginning journey, share things that will be of interest to your audience. You can share quotes, scriptures, thoughts, insights, recipes, photos. It's endless. You guys can do so much more with technology than I can. You have the ability to whatever. Be creative. Think about what your audience would be interested in. If you're writing a devotional, you might want to put scripture up every now and then and talk about how that, just saying. And then maybe talk about how that scripture challenged you. But then also ask the question. This is where it becomes that dialogue. End it with a question. Have you ever experienced this? Or have you ever been challenged? Or what's your favorite scripture verse? Or whatever it is, but to invite them to engage with you. Be careful not to be too personal or too negative. I'm not saying that we can't share what it is that we want to challenge our audience or what we feel like we're supposed to challenge our audience with. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we can be so over the top with a negative attitude that we shut down all conversation. And the point is to be engaging, is to have your audience want to hear what you have to say and want to hear more. That's the point. Okay, dynamic duos. Anybody have a hard time putting together when you're going to do your social media? I mean, especially if you're in college, oh my gosh, your schedules are ridiculous, right? Okay, so dynamic duos. Pick a time that you do something daily that you can pair it with. I have already identified I'm a coffee snob. I love coffee. I drink a 16-ounce cup of coffee every morning at my home. That takes me about 10 to 15 minutes to drink. So the way I started, is that too fast or too slow? Is it really? Well, I talk fast too, so. I paired my social media when I began doing social media. That's what I paired it with. I now take my cup of coffee to my computer, and that's how I start my day. Now, there are things like best time that your audience will be on, et cetera, and yes, you can get into all that, but I'm trying to do the stress-free Lucy and Ethel, taking a step back from the chocolates for a minute to catch their breath and come in with a plan. If you're having a hard time, there is something that you do every day that you can pair social media with. If you are somebody that has a difficult time limiting yourself to how much time, set a timer. I literally have clients who've sent me pictures of really cute and fun timers that they put right by their computers, and some pretty big name authors who send me these cute little pictures of these timers, and they literally set the timers. Now, you don't want to be like this one author who emailed me, and she said, I figured out that I can make a bottle of soda or a can of soda last 6 hours. That's not the point. The point is to do it bite-sized. And what you'll find if you're not already, and probably this audience does, is you're probably on and off your smartphones just like we are, and you're finding those in between times. But if you're having a hard time finding it, pair it with something that you do on a regular basis. Okay, follow the leader. Look for experts in your field or genre. See what they're doing. Join conversations that they're already having or they're already participating in. If you're not following Dr. Pryor, she does a phenomenal job with her social media. She does a great job. She would be a leader to follow. Another one in the Christian industry, in the CBA industry, she writes fiction, YA fiction, is Jen B. Jones. She's a teacher. She does not write full-time, but she writes a lot of books. She's funny. She's engaging. She's witty. She doesn't overshare. When the hostess thing came out, she put out a tweet that I literally laughed out loud. She said, I'm taking it as my personal challenge to save the Hostess Corporation one Twinkie at a time. I thought, that's my kind of gal. She just would have said Susie Q's. But the point is you can follow leaders in the industry or in your genre or your topic. Okay, I usually take an hour to do this, so I am powering through this. If you guys need anything more from me or feel like I left you dangling, I apologize. Let me know. I'll be happy to talk with you too after or through social media. Okay, so hit your mark. This is probably one of the most negative things I'm going to say, so hear me. I paused to get your attention, all right? Author-to-author interaction is not hitting your target in social media. And if you can, at whatever stage you are right now, begin to realize that. They are your peers. They are your friends. They can be your critique group. They can be the ones that feel your pain and celebrate your joy with you. But the reality is, when it comes to selling books, if they have to promote their book over your book over theirs, whose are they going to promote? Their own. And they should. They absolutely should. And they especially should if they have one of the traditional contracts with a publisher, because they have a contractual obligation to sell their book. Think about buzzwords. So if you notice, I'm going to take you quickly back to my bio. Disney, coffee, those are really big search words on Twitter. Almost every time I post something on Twitter about coffee, it gets retweeted. Now the beauty is, if I couple that with something else, that's what I want to talk about really, voila. I just reached a broader audience. So think about your buzzwords. Writing culture, hashtag writing culture is the hashtag for here. There are live tweets going on here, hitting our mark. Speak to and build your audience. Anybody ever heard dress for the job you want? It's the same thing. If you have nobody listening today, talk to them and begin to engage with them as if they're already there. As you're interacting with people, let me back up. Anybody have someone on your social media that you ignore, unfriended, blocked? Anybody in here not done that? Raise your hand if you've not, because I'd like to meet you. Because you are super tolerant. Okay, this is the deal. We don't want to become that person, right? We want what we have to share to be heard, and we want people to want to hear more. One of the ways we can do that is by interacting through our social media as if the person is right in front of us. If it is not socially acceptable in real life, it's a pretty safe bet that it is not social media socially acceptable. Think about things like that. Another way, okay, very quickly, 5 influencers. You're going to want to write this down. I'm actually bringing this in from another writers' conference, from another workshop I do. 5 influencers for every writer. Bookstores, librarians or libraries, teachers, book clubs, and avid readers. This is like a bonus round. You get them? Do I need to repeat them? Okay. Bookstores. I don't know if I'll do it in the same order. I never do it in the same way. Librarians or libraries. Book clubs, teachers, and avid readers. If you didn't get them, you can ask me afterwards. The one thing all 5 of those have in common is they talk about books on a regular basis. And the reason I put avid readers in there, and there are some of you in here, you know, we can't help ourselves but talk about what we're reading or talk about what we're reading next. And so engaging with anybody in one of these 5 groups on your social media will help you already, regardless of who your audience is, to reach your target audience. And lastly, because we all are believers, pray over your social media. You don't need to know everybody that follows you or likes you. You want to be careful and safe, absolutely. But the whole point is to reach a broader audience. And so unless there's something objectionable, and don't hesitate if there is, if you allow somebody to friend you or to follow you, and there becomes something objectionable, you can report that, you can do what you need to do to remain safe. But the point is, I'm not going to know everybody that I interact with, but I can certainly reach more people through using my social media. So, did I do okay? All right.
Fine. Yeah. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
If you were using a pseudonym, how would you use that for social media? How would you promote yourself in that way if you didn't want to give your real name, but you wanted to use a pseudonym instead? And that's how you published under your books and everything.
That's a great question. You're going to want to set up separate accounts for your pseudonym. And I actually have some clients that have done that. But you're going to want to make sure, what I counsel my clients to do is that if you're doing that, if you're going to have a pen name, that you need to have yourself established. So you need, on Facebook, you need a personal and an author page that goes along with that pseudonym. And same with Twitter. You're going to want to make sure that it's consistent across the board. And you're also going to want to be sure that you protect how you're interacting there. So if you go in and interact as yourself under your given name, you're going to kind of blow your cover. So you want to be aware of that.
Very good. All right.
This is just a follow-up to that. How would you handle public-private accounts, your personal account that you would have with friends and family, and a business account? And also, how do you manage on Twitter real engagement with 11,000 followers? I know you had mentioned that earlier. And this is the question, do you automatically follow everyone that follows you? How do you navigate that?
Okay, let me start with the first question and come back. And I'm really glad you asked the first question because I was going to hit on it and then I was like, I don't have time. So I'm glad you asked it. Okay, so the question was that I want to first address is the personal versus business or public. Remember I said that when you stepped into that mantle, you took on the mantle of, or when you accepted the call to write, you took on the mantle of a public figure. So basically when I shared about the photos for my anniversary, I shared those only on my personal Facebook page because they really have nothing to do with my business. However, I have 1,700 followers or friends on my personal Facebook page that, quite frankly, I probably only about 300 are actual friends and family. People want to get to know you, particularly as that public figure, as your personal friend. Think about it. You know? I mean, would you rather get to have a cup of coffee with me, or would you rather get to watch this recording of me on YouTube? If you could choose, you'd rather have the cup of coffee. It's more intimate. It's more personal. It's the same thing. So what I encourage authors to do is just be aware that once again, you step into that role, that on some level, you are giving up that private sector, but really to reach the audience and to rise up to that call, is it worth it? I think it is. So anything you will see on my personal or my business page, it's something that I'm comfortable with anybody professionally knowing about me. I don't have little ones. I will answer that because some of you probably do have little ones. A way to protect their privacy and your privacy is to give them nicknames. So there's a well-known author that names her kids by the groups of which of her children had them. So one set of grandkids are the Bugaboos, and the other ones I think are the Mugwumps. And you can do stuff like that. Another author loves Dr. Seuss and does like thing 1, thing 2 for her kids. And I mean, you can have fun with it and it can play into, and you can continue to keep anonymity. And then the way I address it with my family is I tell my family, I've told them up front, that if it's too personal, I'll delete it or I'll hide it from the thread because I don't want things to be known that are too personal. So that's how I address that. Now, as far as how do you keep track on Twitter with 11,000 followers, which I do have right about that, is I make lists. I make private lists, and that's how I stream through. And I have different groupings based on like who are my clients, who are just industry friends, et cetera, et cetera. And that's how I keep up with them. But then I also do regular searches where I can continue to jump in on conversations that are going on. Does that help? Awesome.
One of the things I struggle with on social media and being a writer is I feel like I don't have something profound to say every 30 minutes or however frequently the tweets go up. So you talk a little about the balance between posting something that's edifying but not posting every 30 seconds about your life and sort of muddying the waters with your audience.
Okay, so I wish I could say, okay, and here is a clear-cut roadmap. There isn't one because each one of our audience is going to be a little different. So one of the tweets I did a couple years ago that got a lot of traction was I wrote, "Dear Hotel, Nescafe is not coffee in my book." And I got a lot of activity about it. Then I got some direct messages about, oh, you work with authors? Well, what do you do? I've got a book. So there are things like that. People would think that I was just putting something out there. And I was on some level, but I'm a coffee snob, so it works for me. But the point is it got some traction. I think what's really important is to find out what's relevant to your audience and what works for you. I tend to be quirky and random. Anybody who works with me is going to interact with that. And so I put those types of things out there. I every now and then will post, when are the Susie Q snack cakes? Hostess should really sponsor me, shouldn't they? put out there about Susie Q snack cakes and when are they going to be on the shelves or whatever. It might seem kind of random, but it's getting my brand name back out there. So you can do it in fun ways to play with it. If there's something that's relevant to your specific, again, topic or genre, I talk a lot about and teach a lot about engagement and relatability. So one of the things I do on my social media that I get a ton of response to is I do hashtag this or that. And I'll ask a question. Apple cider or hot cocoa? Now, it's kind of not really an important or earth-shaking question. It's not probably going to lead anybody to Christ. But do you know people love to tell me their opinions? Oatmeal cookies with or without raisins. I had somebody actually post a recipe for oatmeal cookies. The point is to have them begin to talk with you. And so whatever works with your brand, if you're into sports, talk about sports. If you're into kids, and you want to be involved with mops or whatever, then talk about things that crafts or whatever. But be thinking about what's relevant to your audience in particular.